day without even realizing what's in the way of their ability to perform as a human being. See, I'm of the opinion that everything is all about energy. So, just to tell you, as I said, I've been doing this for a long time now, 20 years, and I've been traveling around the world, standing on stages all around the world, in places like Russia, right across Eastern Europe, right across Europe itself, in America, in Africa, in England, where I've been based for the last 28 years. And I'm very blessed. It's a great life that I live. I get to stand on stages all around the world and share this information with people and share my story. I'm also one of Tony Robbins' trainers. I don't know if there's any Tony Robbins fans here. How many Tony Robbins fans in the room? I'm just curious. Okay, only a few of you. All right, cool. So Tony hasn't really got to Romania yet then. One person came to me after in the break and said that he wasn't a Tony Robbins fan, and there's still some people who are not Tony Robbins fans. That's understandable too. However, Tony, I'm a big fan of Tony's, and I've been with Tony now for about 19 years. How many of you don't know who Tony Robbins is? You have no idea whatsoever. Okay, cool, that's fine. And I was also curious and interested to see that we're standing in the Dale Carnegie room. How many of you are fans of Dale Carnegie here? I'm curious. Okay, only a few of you too. I'm a big fan of Dale Carnegie's too. When I was 16, I read a book. My father told me to read it. He said, Alan, you must read this book. It's called How to Win Friends and Influence People. I was 16. I read a book. I only read some of it because my dad told me to read it. My dad was very strict. Anybody have a strict father here? If you had a strict father, raise your hand, let me see. And my father was all of your fathers wrapped into one. He was super strict because he left school at the age of 12. And he reminded me all the time that my education was costing a fortune. I went to 2 private schools. So when I was 16, he said, Alan, read this book, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. It'll give you everything you need in life. And I said, okay, Dad, I'll read it. And he kept asking if I'd read it. I read bits and pieces of it. I didn't take it in because I was reading it because my father told me. But a few years later, several years later, I read that book again, and it was astounding for me. Very, very powerful book. To this day, still one of the most powerful books ever written, actually. So if you ever want to read a great book about how to influence yourself and influence other people, that's a great book to start with. And it was great to see some other great names here. This hotel's decided to call their names, the names of the rooms, after these famous people who are influencing and impacting the world. So I'm very blessed, as I said, and I pinch myself every morning. I try and keep myself as humble as possible. Every morning I wake up and I say, good morning, good morning. It's great to be alive. Today's my favorite day. Thank you, I'm blessed. The reason I do that is because I'm aware of the fact that being conscious is a very powerful thing to do. And the only way to be conscious is to talk to yourself. And whether you like it or not, you're talking to yourself all day long. How many of you have a little voice in your head that's talking all the time, never shuts up? Raise your hand. Thanks very much. How many of you hear that voice when you're trying to sleep at night and it just won't shut up and you're trying to get to sleep at night? Yeah. You wake up the next morning even more tired than you were the day before. Anyone happen that to you? Anyone have that kind of experience where you wake up the next morning and you're still tired? That's because your mind is digesting everything that's going on in your mind. Today we live in a very interesting time. Fascinating time, in fact. Fascinating. You think how things are changing, how fast things are changing. What's coming in the next 20, 30, or 40 years, most of us are not even prepared for it. If you hear what's being made available to us in the next 10 or 20 years, when you hear about some of this stuff, when you listen to people like Peter Diamandis and people like that, Elon Musk, etc., some of this stuff is astounding. It will blow you away when you actually see what people are doing now and creating. The world is changing faster than ever before, which is great on one hand. On the other hand, however, most of us cannot keep up with it, and what's happening is it's causing us a lot of stress. And we live in stress most of the time. This is a major challenge for us, because when you're stressed, you can't perform effectively. Doesn't matter how good your team is, if your individuals of your team are stressed, they're not performing effectively. In fact, most people in any organization are only performing to like 35 or 40% of their ability. Apparently, statistics say that 72% of any working force is looking for another job. 72% of any working force is looking for another job, which means most people are unsatisfied. What people are doing is they're attaching their satisfaction to external factors, and they're not managing stress effectively. We are only designed to be in stress for very short periods of time. Stress is actually a positive thing if you use it effectively. Because you have something called eustress and distress. Most of us are in distress too often and not effectively using eustress as it's supposed to be using. Stress is powerful when you use it effectively. However, we don't know how to use it effectively, and therefore most of us are not operating at our full potential. So what I'm going to share with you this afternoon as we go forward is some great insights and some great things that you can effectively use in your own life, and also you can share with your teams. When you understand what's driving you, then it makes it more, it just gives you more ability to operate more effectively in your own environment, with your teams, with your families, and with yourself. So I get to do this work, and as I said, it's been an interesting journey for me, and it's brought me to Romania. The first time I came here was in February, and I arrived in Bucharest. It was fantastic. I had a great time. My friend Ozana brought me here, and she was one of the panelists earlier, and she asked me to come out here and do a talk, because she had just recently done a Tony Robbins workshop, and she had seen the effects, the impact of what she learned on that workshop in her business and her life. And so she said, hey, I'd love to make this information available to Romanians, and she invited me out to do a presentation. We had about 300 people there the first time, and we had a very good response. And I've been coming here ever since, and I've been to places like Constanta and Iași. I was in Iași last week, actually I did a presentation in Iași also for Business Revolution. And I'm in Cluj next week, and Timișoara, I think you say it like that, is that right? So I'm starting to learn the language slowly, learn to say good morning, good evening, good afternoon, etc. And I enjoy coming here. It's been an interesting journey for me. And I was saying earlier, I'm of the opinion that everything is energy. How many of you believe that energy is everything? Raise your hand if you understand about energy, or if you've read anything about quantum physics, you know anything, the basics of physics. Physics says that everything is energy, and energy is everything. So that means that's us too. We are also part of that energy, and we get to utilize that energy. In fact, it's energy that keeps us alive. It's energy that's flowing through our bodies all the time, and allowing ourselves to use this mind, this fantastic piece of equipment. We have access to the mind on 3 different levels. When you ask people about the mind, and you ask them to show you where their mind is, I always ask people to point where their mind is. Most people point to their head. Unfortunately, this is your head, this is your brain, but the mind is everywhere. And we tap into the mind. We tap into the mind on 3 different levels. The first one is the conscious mind. The conscious mind. And the conscious mind is a very creative mind by nature. Very creative by nature. Creative by nature, however, it's become critical by nurture. It's become critical by nurture. Now, what does that mean? That means most people are walking around criticizing everything, judging everything, resisting everything. When you're resisting something, you can't flow. You can't get into your natural ability to channel energy effectively. And so if we tap into this mind, this amazing mind, then we are part of this universal mind, which is what energy is. If you study people like Edison, Einstein, Emerson, all of these great minds that have lived before us, all these great physicists, they'll tell you the same thing, that energy flows through everything. Everything is a different vibration. And we are the same thing. So what we need to do is we need to understand that we have this great piece of equipment, this amazing software, that you couldn't build a computer big enough to house the amazing software between your ears. You couldn't build a computer big enough on this planet. Everything you've ever seen, heard, felt, touched, experienced is stored in your unconscious. And your unconscious mind, or your subconscious, if you want to call it your subconscious or your unconscious, it's the part of your mind that operates below the surface, that does everything you never need to worry about. It's 1,000,000 times stronger than your conscious mind. Think about that. 1,000,000 times stronger than your conscious mind. Now, if your conscious mind is critical by nurture, that means it's become critical over time. How does that work? Well, if everything is energy, and energy is flowing through everything, then this is the same thing with the mind. The mind taps into energy and utilizes energy to be able to make sense of the world around it. We've got the second part of the mind, which is the unconscious mind. As I said about the unconscious mind, is the part of your mind that operates below the surface. Takes care of everything that's operating within your body, your heart rate, your respiratory system, your digestive system, etc. Your blood cells, the flow of your blood, everything that's operating unconsciously. And this is 1,000,000 times stronger than this side of your mind. This part of your mind has become critical through nurture. How does this happen? How does it happen? Well, if you think about the fact that when you were a baby, as soon as you were born, what were you given? You were given a name, a race, a culture, a creed. You were given a whole set of rules. And you were told who you were and how you should operate, and which boxes you should fit into, and when you should talk and when you shouldn't talk, and who you should talk to and who you shouldn't talk to. Most parents in this room have probably told their kids at least once, don't talk to strangers. Raise your hand if you ever told your kids that. Or if you ever heard that as a child. Raise your hand if you heard that as a child, don't talk to strangers. Yeah, always interesting for me, because when you get together in a business environment, people say network with the people next to you. Everybody's so afraid to talk to the person next to them because unconsciously they heard so many times, don't talk to strangers. You say, oh, that doesn't affect me. Yes, it does. It affects everybody. I walk around all the time and I talk to people. I was just walking with my friend Alex this morning in the hotel. Someone walked past me. I said, good morning. He looked at me like I was strange. Maybe he didn't understand English. But most people do understand what good morning means. But the reason he looked at me like that is because most people are so surprised when you greet them. Which is a natural thing for human beings, is to connect and to greet each other. When we get into these habits, these patterns, we do the same thing all the time. Think about it. Think about your morning this morning. I bet you got out of bed on the same side of the bed that you get out of bed every morning. And you walk the same route that you did to the bathroom, picked up your toothbrush, probably with your right hand if you're right-handed, or your left hand if you're left-handed, started brushing your teeth on the left side if you're right-handed, or on the right side if you're left-handed, and did the same routine that you did with the teeth, then walk to the kitchen, put the toaster on, or the coffee, or whatever it is, then walk to the bedroom, start to get changed, put your makeup on, etc. You do the same thing over and over and over again. What happens is you develop this pattern, this habitual way of operating. You do exactly the same thing with your mind. And you learn to be critical through the experiences you had as a kid. Your parents, what they did was unconsciously, they passed their belief systems onto you. They told you what was good, what was not good. And you learn about punishment and reward system. So if you were a good kid, you probably got sweets or toys. If you weren't a good kid, nobody talked to you for a while, you had to sit on the naughty step. So you learn about all these rules, right? And then what happens is, you get into the business world, and people are not effective because they have all this stuff in their unconscious mind that's being digested constantly non-stop. And the unconscious mind will do whatever the conscious mind tells it to do. If the conscious mind is critical and always complaining about what's missing, then the unconscious mind is digesting that all the time. That's why people don't sleep well. That's why people get ill. That's why people don't operate effectively. Because what's happening in the mind is not serving them. So now you have access to the mind on a third level. And access to the mind at the superconscious level. Superconscious. And this is your connection to your genius. Everybody has a genius. Everybody is a genius. We forget that though. And so this is our connection to the superconscious. It's our connection to our genius. This is where your intuition resides. And with your intuition, you can make better decisions. But what you have to do is you have to recognize that you're not going to make those decisions from your mind, from your head. If you're in your head, you're dead. You've got to get out of your head. So I'll give you an example of this experience for me. And what people are doing is they're trying to meet needs. And when I was a kid, I was also trying to meet some needs. And just like we all do, we all have these emotional needs. So as a child, when I was young, I had similar experiences, just like you guys have had. We all have these painful experiences, these SEEs. And these SEEs, what they do is they form a paradigm. SEEs are significant emotional events. And what they form over a period of time is they form a paradigm. And what is a paradigm? A paradigm is a unique way of seeing the world. My pens keep falling off the table, it's interesting. I'll put it in between two glasses. A paradigm is a unique way of seeing the world. It's made up of what? It's made up of a set of beliefs. A set of beliefs. What's interesting about beliefs, though, is that every single belief has a consequence. So raise your hand if you think you're intelligent. Raise your hand if you believe you're intelligent. Oh wow, there's not enough of you. You guys are too hard on yourself. If you're intelligent, what's the consequence of having a belief like you're intelligent? Well, there's positive and negative consequences. There's positive and negative consequences to every single belief. So you have a belief that you are intelligent. So remind me, raise your hand if you believe you're intelligent. Let's see if we get more hands up this time. Less hands this time. Wow. Who's not going to put up their hand no matter what I ask you this morning? Or this afternoon? Alright, a couple of you. So, would you mind if I just take my jacket off? That's alright, please, thank you. And so, if you have a belief that you're intelligent, then there's a positive and a negative belief to that. A positive and negative consequence to a belief like you're intelligent. What's the positive consequence of a belief like I'm intelligent? Well, then obviously you hang around with intelligent people. You learn stuff, you study stuff, you believe you're intelligent, you mix with a certain group of people, but what's the negative consequence of a belief that you're intelligent? Well, you won't talk to people who are not as intelligent as you. Some of you are nodding. Yeah, it's true. We don't tend to associate with people who we believe, or we don't believe that they're on the same level of intelligence as us. So as a kid, I was a kid, just like all of us have been a kid. Raise your hand if you've ever been a kid before. Thank you. So, part of my intention here today is to have some fun, right? This is always good to include some fun. So, just like you, I was a kid too, and I was growing up in South Africa. And I grew up right next door to a police station. And I grew up, for the first 6 years of my life, I lived right next door to Point Road Police Station. Now, when I grew up in Durban, which is on the east coast of South Africa, pretty big city, and I grew up right on the beach, South Beach is where I grew up. And Point Road Police Station was responsible for the whole of South Beach. And if you went down to the end of Point Road, then you came to the docks, or the harbour mouth. And Durban Harbour is a massive harbour, it's very busy. And if you went down to the harbour mouth, you could walk all the way around to the end of the jetty, right out into the sea, and watch the big tanker ships coming past you. I used to love to do that as a child with my child minder. It was awesome fun. However, at about the age of 4.5 years of age, I was playing in the courtyard outside where we lived. I was playing with some cars, and I heard a scream next door in the police yard next door. And what happened was I went over to the wall, and I was curious about what was happening over the wall next door. So I climbed onto these bins, and I climbed onto the wall, and I moved along the wall until I found a gap. And I looked through that gap. I couldn't see a lot, but I could see enough. And what I saw was a white policeman beating a black man to within an inch of his life with something called a shambok, which is a long whip like this that's made of natural materials in Africa. The kids make them on the farms in Africa to use them for herding sheep and cattle. Very effective whip. And the longer you make it, the more lethal it becomes. But it's lethal in anybody's hands at any size. And I watched this white policeman beat a black man to death. Now, let me tell you what that meant for me as a kid. And what that means for all of us as individuals when we have experiences like I've just told you about in SEE. What it meant is that it undermined my level of feeling safe. We all have these needs, these emotional needs, every single one of us. Doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, everyone has these emotional needs. And my certainty or my safety, my level of feeling safe, living next door to a police station, was undermined drastically that day because I watched what I saw was a brutal act. It was white policemen, doesn't matter what color they are, but policemen in general are supposed to be good people, keep you safe. And yeah, I watched somebody getting beaten to death. I did not tell anyone about that because I thought I'd get into trouble, so I just kept it to myself. But anytime I heard any commotion in the police yard next door from that day onwards, I was always curious, and I found my little perching spot, and I used to look through that little gap and watch what was going on next door. It wasn't always brutal, but it was always fascinating, as you can imagine. When I was about 6 years of age, we moved away from that area. Something else that was also occurring when I was young is that we have these other needs too. The second one is uncertainty, also known as variety. And I didn't have a lot of variety when I was young. So I had the same routines. And my father, when he wasn't working, he was involved with the golf club. He was a golfer, a keen golfer. Any keen golfers here? I've heard that golf is not that popular in Romania. Is that true? There's only two of us here. Myself and my friend Ollie. So my father was a keen golfer. So that meant that I always had to go to the golf club on the weekend after school. When I wasn't at school on the weekend. So there wasn't a lot of variety for me as a kid. My parents were very strict. As I told you, my father was super strict. The reason he was super strict is because he left school when he was 12. Because his mother, my grandmother, said you can't go to school anymore because his father, my grandfather, went away to the army, went away to war. So my father had to work on the farm. So even when he was going to school, he went to school bare feet and he used to walk to school. There wasn't much money. So when he got the opportunity to go back to college and get himself a degree in engineering, and then he got himself a good job, and then he had me, I was an only child, and my father's main intention was, I've got to give my son a good education. And he kept reminding me, Alan, this education costs a fortune. Please don't waste it. And then when I was 14, he took me out of that school and put me in another school, which was a boarding school. And then I was into routine again, just routine, same thing all the time. So not much variety. We all have these needs, my friends. Remember this. Every single one of us has these needs. The third one is significance. That means we all want to feel special to some degree. We all want to feel acknowledged to some degree. We want to feel like we mean something. We want to feel like our life has some meaning. The fourth one is love and connection. We all want to feel connected. We want to feel loved by the people that we have around us, our family, our friends, etc. When I was a kid, my certainty was undermined. I was also bullied as a kid, right through my young schooling life. I just routine after routine. Routine was very important. Well, it was important for my folks, so there was not much variety for me. And significance was also a challenge for me. I wanted significance because I wanted to feel like my father loved me. I didn't feel like my father loved me because I had an experience when I was young where I made an interpretation that wasn't accurate. Now, I'm going to give you an example of what happened. I'm going to tell you what happened. My father came home from school. My father came home from work, and I was already home from school. And I heard him come home from work. I heard him, and what I used to do is I used to run up to him, put my arms around him, and say, "Dad, pick me up, Dad, pick me up, pick me up, Dad." And he used to pick me up and throw me in the air. It was his usual routine. He was a big guy, 6'4", very strong man, and I used to love being thrown in the air. That particular day, though, when he came home that day, I ran up to him. I did the same thing. "Dad, pick me up, Dad, pick me up, pick me up, Dad." And he shouted at me, "Not now, son, I'm busy." I'd never seen that before. And what happened in that moment is I made an interpretation. There's two areas that we're living in life. Two areas. We think we live in real time. We think we live in real time, but we don't. We live slightly behind real time, a nanosecond, where we are interpreting real time through our paradigm, through the filter that we've created since the time we were born. So, this is what happened, WH. What happened is what happened. And do you think as a youngster, do you think that when you're a child, do you think that you may not have all the facts at hand? And because you can't use a logical brain prior to the age of 6, you're learning by association, you delete, distort, and generalize information. Do you think it's possible that when something happens and you perceive it, you may make an incorrect interpretation of what happened? Yes or no? Yes or no?
Yes.
Come on, brush off. Work with me. Yes or no?
Yes.
Of course. It's the truth, right? You would obviously make an incorrect assumption or an incorrect interpretation of what happened. And that's what we do as children. So from the time we're born, as I said, as soon as you get your name, then what happens is you start perceiving information, you start absorbing information. Even before you're born, you're already perceiving information because you're perceiving the information that your mother's experiencing, or the emotions that your mother's experiencing, because it's energy, it's transferred in utero. So then you pop out this bundle of energy in this little form of a child, and now you're starting to absorb what's happening around you, and belief systems are being projected onto you, and you're forming your own paradigm. And as things are happening, you're making your interpretation of what they mean. That day when my father came home from work, I didn't have the intelligence. I was only 4.5, 5 years of age, around that age. I couldn't say to my dad, "Hang on a second, Dad. I can see you've had a tough day. I'll be back later to get my hugs," right? I couldn't do that because children can't do that prior to the age of 6. It's only around the age of 6 that you actually start to reason. Prior to that, it's all by association. You learn everything by association. And what happens is, when you have painful experiences, you make an interpretation of that experience. And you keep making these interpretations as you go through your life. Until eventually, you have a story about how things are. You've got a story. What's interesting is that people in your organizations, they all have their own individual stories about how life is, about who they are, and about how the economy is. I know right now that Romania is going through a tough time in the economy. How many of you are feeling the pinch right now in your organizations, in your business? How many of you are still thriving nonetheless? Things are going well for you, even though the economy is tough. Wow, nobody's thriving. Maybe you didn't understand that question. You thriving?
No, I didn't understand the question.
Okay, cool. So, nobody's thriving. Okay, isn't it interesting though that in any economy, there are still people who thrive, yes or no? There are still organizations who thrive, yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah, of course. And in any down economy, are there still people who are in any great economy, are there still people who are suffering? Still people who are challenged, yes or no?
Yes.
Of course. So when does it happen then? How does this happen? Because organizations are made up of individuals, and every individual has its own paradigm. Every individual has their own unique paradigm, which is made up of a collection of beliefs. Now, if you have dreams, everyone has dreams, obviously, and let's say your organization has a dream, or your company has a dream or a vision. Every company has a vision. And companies want to impact the world, they want to make a difference, they want to serve their clients, they want to put profit on the bottom line. Ultimately, that's what it's all about. But that's about execution, effective execution. You can't effectively execute on any vision or dream if you've got people walking around with dysfunctional paradigms based on disempowering beliefs. Now, if you look at the word belief, you may not have noticed this before, but there are 3 letters in the middle of the word belief, L-I-E, which spell lie, which is what most beliefs are. Most beliefs are lies, because they don't serve. Especially if you've got a dysfunctional belief system about the fact I'm not good enough, which is what the kind of belief system that I grew up with. Because I had these interactions with my father, and as I got older and I progressed into teenage, into becoming a teenager, I started clashing heads with my father more and more because I became even more rebellious. The stricter my father was, the more rebellious I became. And so I had a dysfunctional belief system about myself. I wasn't academically minded. I got an E for enough when I left school. I just made it. Much to my parents' dismay. Because they spent a fortune. Most of their income went to my education. They never owned their own business, never owned their own property. They never let me forget the fact that my education cost a fortune, but I never did very well. I got an E for enough. So when I left school, I had to go into the army. It was compulsory for a South African male in 1985 to become a military man if you didn't get into university. So I went straight into the military. And what they did was it compounded on top of the already dysfunctional or disempowering belief system I had, because I already believed I wasn't intelligent. I believed my father never loved me, and then I believed that I was ugly because I was teased all the time and bullied about my nose. So I got this unique looking nose. And then I went into the military, which only served to make things even worse. And what happened was, I spent 2 years being shipped all over the country, being trained in all kinds of different disciplines. And then in 1987, I was a patrol motorist and an RPG-7 rocket launcher, which meant that I was in a 20mm 6-wheel mechanized infantry vehicle, which was designed to carry 10 troops. And I went up with 5,000 other soldiers into Angola on a top secret mission. We were sworn to secrecy. At the time, according to the Geneva Convention, South Africa was not allowed to be in Angola. And so 5,000 of us went up into Angola during that time. There was a civil war that had been raging there for many, many years. Millions of people had been killed. And South Africa was called into Angola to fight against the enemy, which were 52,000 that were Russian-funded and Cuban-led, and Russian artillery. And we spent 7 months at war. My very first combat lasted about 2 minutes. I remember how it started. I was lying on my side of the vehicle on a little bed that I had made. I was the only person on my side of the vehicle. On the other side was the medic. And I'd fashioned myself a little bed. Because I'd taken my mortars, 4 mortars in each case, I'd packed them up to the same level as the bench. I made myself a bed, rolled out a blanket, and I was lying on my back in a mobile microwave oven. That's what it felt like. This microwave oven driving around on 6 wheels, 45 degrees in the shade. It was boiling hot. I had a Walkman, a Sony Walkman in those days. It was the first original Walkman, and I was listening to 1% tape that I had, which was U2, the Joshua Tree. Any fans here of U2? One of my favorite bands. And I was listening to this, was 1987. And we're driving around through the bush, and we keep getting the reconnaissance that keeps coming through the channels. And the reconnaissance is that the enemy's up front, the enemy's here, and we keep looking for the enemy like cat and mouse for 2 weeks. And eventually we ran into the enemy, 4 Russian tanks. And it only lasted about 2 minutes, but they took us out. We were heavily outgunned. And in that first 2 minutes, as I jumped out of the door with all my weapons, my mortar pipe in one hand, my RPG-7 rocket launcher, my rifle over my back, 12 magazines on my chest, carrying 8 bombs, carrying 25 kilograms, in fact. And as I jumped out and I hit the floor, a bullet hit the door and ricocheted off the door. I heard the sharp sound in my ear and I felt the puff of air on my face. Luckily, it didn't go into the vehicle, otherwise I wouldn't be standing here. But as I hit the ground and I began to set up my mortar and wait for some instructions, screaming everywhere, mortars going off, a MiG-27 flew overhead, dropped the bomb. It was crazy. And that vehicle that was just to the left of me, about 75 meters, 80 meters in front of me, which was our vehicle, Charlie car, it was manned by my friend Andre Tom and Franz Gulenberg, the gunner and the driver. I can't remember the anti-air gunner's name, he was in the back. And that car was taken out by a Russian tank. We ran into 4 Russian tanks. We couldn't see them until we were right on top of them, as they were dug into the ground. T-55s. And one of them pulled out of the bush, swung the turret round, and took out that car, and it went up in a puff of smoke. My friends Andre Tom and Franz Gulenberg didn't feel a thing, thank God. They wouldn't have felt any pain. It was instant for them. Within 2 minutes, we were retreating, and a medic came running through the bush. And he said, "Who's got O-positive blood?" I said, "Me." He said, "Follow me." I ran through the bush behind him. While we were running through the bush, there's rifle fire going off, mortars going off, people screaming. It was crazy, as you can imagine. And we disappeared over a ridge. I got to the ridge and there was a big crater in the ground, and at the bottom of this crater there were all these soldiers that were being treated by medics. Many of them suffering missing limbs. The medic turned around, grabbed my arm, he put a needle in my arm, and I watched the blood drain out of my arm into the arm of the soldier lying on the floor in front of me. I dropped to my knees, I began to wave the flowers of his face. His flower, he had a beard, and he was matted with blood, covered in blood, flowers all over him. And as I waved the flowers of his face, I was saying out loud, please don't die, please don't die, please don't die. And then I said, please God, get me home alive, please don't die. And then I looked, and I recognized him. It was a friend of mine who was in the other car, who was on the right-hand side, and ran into this attack. He was the anti-air gunner. He would have been standing out of the back, out of the hatch, with a twin-barrel machine gun for any air attack. And obviously, a piece of shrapnel went through the front of his head, the back of his head up. He died 3 hours later. And then every other day for 7 months, we encountered the enemy, and every time we encountered the enemy, the doors opened. I jumped out with my mortar pipe, and I put mortars onto the enemy, just like I was trained to do. And I put RPG-7 rockets into the vehicles that I was told to take out. It was a very tough time, as you can imagine. I was having 2 conversations with myself at the same time. One of the conversations was WTF. I'm sure you know what that means here in Romania too, right? The other conversation was just do what, I'm just going through the process, going through the training. I was trained to do it, and plus I'm trying to keep my buddies alive. For 7 months, that unfolded, and then 7 months later, I jumped on a plane. We flew out of Angola. 4 days later, I was at a parade. I got some medals, and then I was sent home. And then when I got home, it was very quiet in my bedroom, but it was very noisy in my head. I had to learn how to process what I'd been through. There's only one difference between people who are very successful, organizations who are very successful, and individuals who are not successful, organizations who are not successful. It's the way they process information, the way they process the experiences that are taking place, the way they process the economy, the way they process the market, the way they process adversity, or the way they process surprises. And so I was learning how to process what I'd been through. It was at that time, in 1988, July of 1988, that I was introduced to the subject of psychology through a book called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And I began to read that day in July of 1988, Think and Grow Rich. I know some of you have heard of this book. How many of you have heard of this book, Think and Grow Rich? Who's read this book? I'm curious. If you haven't read it, you should definitely read it. It's exceptionally powerful. Even though it was first published in 1937, it's still now, in 2018, one of the most powerful books you ever read. And I read that book 3 times in 88, and that's 30 years ago today. And that led me onto a path to study human behavior, study psychology. And after 11, 12 years of studying this stuff, I began to start teaching this stuff. And as I said, for the last 20 years, I've been teaching this now to organizations around the world. What's interesting about people is that they don't understand that they are driving themselves crazy by not utilizing the mind that they have effectively. They're utilizing the equipment that they have effectively.